Duelists, what's up? RBET02 signups are now open in the FL Discord. There's a link to that in the description below. You'll find all the important information on entering the tournament there. Remember, this tournament does have a cap at 320 players, and there are already 140 people entered. Well, actually more than that by now probably. So make sure and get in. Make sure and sign up because we will be cutting off the signups at 320 entrants. The prize payout, everything will be announced on that. I believe first place is getting like well over $400 as of right now. So definitely get on those signups. Get in the FL Discord. Today's video, it's par of the course for all of these major tournaments. I like to do a little predictions before we get into the major events. Let's just go ahead and hop right into things. Smash like, subscribe, you know the vibe. First things first. Miracle Fusion Absolute Zero. This deck has been pretty much not dominating Edison format, but it's been making itself known, I will say. And I think that that's pretty much gonna be the case for tomorrow's event as well. I think Absolute Zero decks, Miracle Fusion decks, they're gonna be good. They're gonna be a good pick. If you're newer to the format, maybe try out Diva Hero, try out Hero Beat. I think they're a solid choice for tomorrow's event. Now, of course, with any sort of like warping or any sort of like focus on any one deck in particular, we're going to see some metagame changes, some new techs. And I think one of the biggest new techs that we're going to see is Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. This card saw a little bit of play in Teledad format, and it also saw a lot of play in GOAT format as well. I think this card is phenomenal in today's metagame. It's great at countering the Miracle Fusion, obviously, but it's also pretty good at countering things like Dark Arm Dragon, and of course, Blackwing Vayu, which is another deck that I think is here to stay. Blackwing Vayu won the first RBET tournament. I think the Vayu Turbo decks are really quick. They punish you for slow starts. They punish you for having an inconsistent deck. They're very good against inexperienced opponents who don't know how to navigate tricky situations. They can kill you out of nowhere. And they also get to maximize off of broken cards like Burial from the Different Dimension and Brain Control. Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer is really good against these decks, so I expect to see, I expect to see it because it does well against the decks that, obviously, the first and second place decks from the last event both struggle a little bit with Kaiku. You do need to be careful when playing cards like Kaiku. So I think we might see a little bit of a resurgence with cards like Dimensional Prison and Bottomless Trap Hole. These are two cards that had fallen out of favor a little bit for things like Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. And while I do expect to see a large amount of Phoenix Wing Wind Blast in the tournament tomorrow, I think we will see also in tandem some more Deep Prison, some more Bottomless Trap Hole, maybe less things like Solemn Judgment. I think Solemn Judgment is one of those cards that, as the metagame speeds up, as the decks get more aggressive, paying 4,000 life points early on in the game is really dangerous. This card is super powerful, don't get me wrong, but if you pay 4,000 at any point against a deck like Vayu, they're one Dark Grepher away from just killing you. So you have to play safe the entire game after you resolve that Solemn Judgment, and it's just a tricky situation. Similarly, the Miracle Fusion decks can just pump out an Absolute Zero plus maybe like a Stratos or something and hit you for 4,000 pretty easily past a Solemn Judgment. So while I think Solemn Judgment is a very good card, it's a very risky card to be casting early in this super aggressive metagame we have. We may or may not see more or less of it. I don't know. That's just something that I've been thinking about a little bit more. Cards that I think are going to get a little bit better too. I think Mind Crush is going to get a lot better, especially when metagames homogenize. This card is going to see, just more success. When more people are playing similar lists, you can make more educated reads. I think it's a solid card in those types of situations. I expect to see, of course, Fairies, Dragons, and Quick Draw. All three of these decks are pretty much mainstays of the format at this point. They're all really solid. I think Fairies and Dragons are both very, very powerful, consistent decks. They've shown that in the hands of the right player, they will guarantee you a top, which is what everyone's going to be looking for in this event. I mean, top 8 is where all the prizes are, right? Top 8 gets you the invite to the Invitational at the end of the year, the Ribbit Rulers Invitational. It also gets you cash fucking money. Shout out to Metafy for that. And that's just what you want. You want to be playing a solid, consistent deck list with a really solid plan. Unfortunately, I think for decks like Lightsworn, you're looking at like a little bit too high of a variance. Sure, you could run hot, but in a tournament where you can only give 2 matches, it's double elimination, right? you can't like really afford to have that many games where you're just drawing multiple wolves, you're drawing like multiple bricks, like Celestia's JD's early. It's tough. Or like, let's say you have a hand where you have a starter like a Lila, but you go second, your opponent just bottomless is it, and then the rest of the game you brick. Like, you can't afford to have too many games like that. So I think Lightsworn in the larger events, it may struggle a little bit just with consistency issues. Other decks that I think might do a little bit better just because of the nature of their like hyper consistent stuff is Quick Draw. I think Quick Draw is like one of those decks that it has a very even keel. For longer events, it can take you pretty far as long as you play well. I think there's a lot of really cool variants. My favorite variant right now, of course, is the one that I came up with, the Dark Simorgh Dark World variant. I'd be really excited to see if that does anything in the RBET tournament tomorrow. Dark Simorgh is a really powerful card against a lot of decks. I think it has a very hidden floodgate aspect to it, and the effect that you can special summon it from the graveyard means it's just another high impact mill. It's a really fast clock. If your opponent does something like Solemns it, or Mirror Forces it, or Torrentials it, you can bring it back from the graveyard pretty easily and keep them locked out. I think this is a great way to approach Quick Draw, especially with the Dark World stuff. I think that has a good chance of doing pretty well. We're definitely going to be seeing a lot of Caius the Shadow Monarch. This is right now the most played card in Edison format, most played card in the top 8s especially. I think it's a very powerful card. It's like I don't know, it's just everything you want in a card. It's very versatile. It rewards you for playing well. It rewards you for sticking monsters and, just defending them, defending your position. It helps you run away with games. A couple of Caiuses can close things out pretty quickly. And I think because of the nature of, if you look at like what we're talking here, we're talking Vayu, we're talking Kaiku, we're talking malicious decks with the Absolute Zero, we're talking Caius in every deck, we're talking Red Eyes, we're talking maybe Dark Simorgh, Dark World stuff in the Quick Draw deck. I think we're going to see a pretty big rise in Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. I think this is a really good floodgate for the current metagame. It hits something in almost every single deck, and it hits multiple things in a lot of other decks. You do have to be careful because it's not killing the Caius, so the Caius is still going to kill you under Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. But if you have a board or a position you want to protect, like let's say you have a strong monster, like you summon a Stardust Dragon. Stardust Dragon plus Shadow Imprisoning Mirror could be a house in a lot of matchups. They may struggle removing that Stardust Dragon, as most people's key pieces of removal involve Caius the Shadow Monarch. I think we are going to see a lot more Fossil Dyna. This is a card that has let people make pushes for lethal. It's helped clear really big established boards with like Absolute Zero and like a Gilman or like whatever, like a bunch of special summon stuff. I think it's a solid card. We've seen people tech it to some success in the EdisonFormat.com events, and I think we'll probably see a bit more of it teched in the main deck of some things, especially the more like controlling, stun, like heavy trap lineup decks. I could definitely see more Fossil Dyna. I also think we are going to see a little bit more Banisher of the Radiance. It helps beat up on a lot of other strategies. Oh, that's another thing about Kaiku. Kaiku's really good against the Dragon deck too, because they can't activate Red Eyes Wyvern from the graveyard, and they also can't activate Phantom of Chaos if they're playing the Dark Dragon list that got top 8 at the first RBET event. I think this is just a really solid meta call. Banisher to a lesser degree, I think we'll see Banisher more in the Fairy deck or in like Lightsworn even, or decks that are just playing a bunch of trap cards. We might even see Banisher in something like Black Wings, perhaps, or Flamvel, or just a deck where you're just trying to poke at your opponent and defend your beat sticks and play that kind of game plan. I also think we're going to see a lot more Thunder King. Thunder King is a card that I've been incredibly impressed with in aggressive metagames like the current one. It is a little awkward when people are playing Raikou Caius. I also don't think it's great specifically against the Vayu deck or in some positions against the Miracle Fusion deck specifically, but in general it's really solid. Most decks are playing Rhoda. Most decks are playing like a lot of ways to, I don't know, synchro summon, and just having an onboard way to stop a synchro summon, onboard way to stop like a Bryonic or a Stardust Dragon from hitting play. If your opponent is going for something like a Cold Wave or a Heavy Storm or a True Nade, they're going to need an additional piece of removal to remove the Thunder King in order to get past that and synchro summon. In last year's Edison Legends tournament, we saw Thunder King have a lot of success in Topher 702's Blackwing list, and I think we'll probably see a lot more of it moving forward. I could definitely see a more controlling version of Lightsworn with like triple Thunder King doing really well, or even a more controlling version of the Fairies deck with like triple Thunder King doing very well as well. I think this card is well positioned in metagames where people are maybe shying away from Raikou, shying away from that sort of stuff, and It's also great when you have a Shadow Imprisoning Mirror in play, because it's just like, you can't Caius me, you know, you can't like do that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on Thunder King and Banisher. I think these are kind of like more speculative than Kaiku. I think we're for sure going to see more Kaiku. But Thunder King and Banisher could also fill that sort of role of like stun monster that forces the opponent to have an additional piece of removal before they make any sort of push. I'm excited to see if anyone pushes any developments with combo decks. I know we saw a frog combo deck with like Poison Draw Frog that Frog Slicer was playing in the last event. This is a deck that I think could be problematic for some strategies. However, I think this deck also struggles with A, consistency issues, and B, dealing with stuff like maybe Fossil Dyna or Phoenix Wing Windblast or DD Crow. Oh yeah, DD Crow's another one. We're going to see a lot of DD Crow. I think DD Crow is like, well, first off, it's the only hand trap in the format, and it interacts on a level that not really much else interacts with. It helps you deal with some unfair stuff that most cards don't really deal with. So if you have a strong proactive game plan, DD Crow is one of the best ways to back it up and keep your opponent from doing unfair stuff to come back against you. It is a little bit low impact, but if your main engine is strong enough, like let's say you're playing Vayu, or let's say you're playing the hero engine, where your Stratos is auto +1ing, or let's say you're even playing something like Machina or Gadgets or whatever, I think DD Crow is fine there as well, because your engine kind of offsets the low impact nature of using a DD Crow on a graveyard thing. And it also gives you a lot of like versatility in situations where you can force your opponent into a position where they need to summon a Debris Dragon to nuke, or they need a Miracle Fusion with only like one water engrave or whatever. And the DD Crow can, it can oftentimes trade for a high impact situation, and it can secure positions that most cards can't really secure outside of things like Herald of Orange Light in the Fairy deck, of course. So I'm excited to see if people do push this combo deck. I don't know how well it will do, especially with a more optimized metagame, but I could see it doing well in the earlier rounds, maybe. I'm also excited to see if anyone develops any Chain Burn stuff. I know Chain Burn is a not fan favorite deck, but I actually really enjoy it. I think it's a cool deck to watch play. I think it has a lot of play to it for sure. Because of that, I think maybe more people might be considering Royal Decree or Jinzo. A lot of decks are just being pushed to the maximum right now. They're just being pushed to like force everyone to have as many outs to something as possible. And that's when floodgates like Royal Decree and Jinzo get really good. Not only are the people who are playing the all-in decks like Chain Burn, where you have like 38 trap cards or whatever crazy amount, those get punished by Royal Decree and Jinzo or other floodgates, but also the decks that are being like super defensive about things, like let's say Blackwings or Glads, where they're playing like 15 plus traps to try and like counter everything at once, they're going to get hard punished by stuff like Jinzo and Royal Decree. So I wonder if we're going to see more of these cards too. I think this is all speculative, of course. We probably won't see too much Chain Burn or too much of these cards specifically. I do like Royal Decree a lot more when you have ways to blow up the board. So I like it in Lightsworn a fair bit, and I do like it a lot in Debris Dragon decks as well. I'm honestly really excited to see what people come up with. Every single event, someone has come up with something totally new, and it's taken the tournament by storm. Last time we had the Amaryllis Burn deck from Carpath. That deck was sick. That deck was so cool. I wonder if we're going to see more of it. We probably will, just because it's such a fun deck to play. Even when you're losing with this deck, it feels just like a well-oiled machine. It just feels like a great time. And it's also one of the best decks to play Phoenix Wing Windblast, which is inarguably one of the best cards in the format. I think as the format develops, we're going to see that the versatility of being able to remove either a back row or a monster or like a Stardust Dragon, like all in one card, and then being able to do it at any point, basically, being chainable, I think that's just like, that versatility is so much better than the discard that you're spending. And if you're cutting them off of a relevant draw phase, if you're giving them a dead card or a card that's not going to be live in later situations, it's essentially paying for itself because they lose their next draw phase. It's like a time seal, more or less, in a lot of situations. So this card's really great, especially with the openings in decks playing Stratos or decks playing like Vayu or decks that just like have cards they want to discard. I could even see Lightsworn playing Phoenix Wing Windblast just to help set up their grave, maybe pitch a Dead Wolf, a card that's not doing anything in your hand. I could see this card being in a wide variety of strategies. It's very solid. We could also see more stuff like Trap Stun as a response to these types of trap lineups that are playing like Phoenix Wing, Wind Blast, Deep Prison, Bottomless Trap Hole, and maybe no Solemn Judgment. We could also see more Dark Bribe. I don't think Dark Bribe is that good, but if people are playing cards with heavy discard costs, like Phoenix Wing, Wind Blast, it's not the worst. It's just kind of hard to tell. Your engine has to be really fucking good for Dark Bribe to be good. And most decks that can play this don't really have the room for it anyway. Like, I'm thinking like Dragons, like, they could play it if they wanted to. Maybe you play one to protect your rivalry in post boards. I've definitely sided one in Dragons before and had some success with it, but I don't know if we're going to see it, like, super up there. As far as, like, OTK stuff goes, I don't think we're going to see so much of the Turbo Dragon decks. I think we're going to see sort of a balance between that and maybe the more controlling lists with Royal Oppression. Royal Oppression is really polarizing right now because let's just say, like, you're metagaming against the decks that got first and second at the last RBET event. Royal Oppression is pretty good against the Miracle Fusion decks, but they do have Snowman Caius and Stratos, and they have a lot of ways to play through a Royal Oppression. Plus, they have a lot of ways to remove it and deal with it in, like, the most offensive way possible. Phoenix Wing, Wind Blast, putting Royal Oppression back on top of your deck, and then you're brick drawing a Royal Oppression the next turn after your opponent's already special summoned. It's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling. And also, Royal Oppression is not so good against the Vayu deck either. Naturally, Vayu, plays through Royal Oppression because it doesn't banish itself and the other material for cost, meaning you can just keep activating it over and over again. I think the metagame right now is a little bit good against Royal Oppression. The Fairy deck even mains it, the Dragon deck mains it, the Vayu deck mains it, and the Hero deck can play through it pretty easily. Maybe if your deck mains Royal Oppression, maybe consider siding it, maybe consider not even including it at all. It is still the best Floodgate in the format by a lot, but it's also just kind of awkward in the specific metagame that was the top 8 of the last tournament. You flip one of these against the Burn deck, for example, or against Chain Burn, it's just like they're thanking you for it. So I don't know if we're going to see a lot of Royal Oppression. I'd be interested to see how that works out. It's obviously very good against some of the, like, balls to the wall combo decks, like the Quick Draw Dark World or the Frog combo decks. And it's definitely great against decks like Fish and Quick Draw, like the more standard lists of that. I think it's really good in post-board situations if your deck doesn't play trap cards, because then your opponent's going to be siding out removal to it. For example, with, like, Lightsworn, I think it's really good in the sideboard of Lightsworn. I actually think it's pretty good in the sideboard of Monarch decks, especially if you have a plan where you're bringing in, like, multiple Snowmans, multiple Jujutsu Masters, and then you have Royal Oppressions as well. Oftentimes, if you just stick a Monarch with a Royal Oppression backing it up, you're pretty much good to go, even though your Treeborn Frog is shut off, and your opponent's strategies, like Gladiator Beasts, like, normally the stuff that hurts your Monarch strategy, it's going to get fucked up by Royal Oppression. So if we see more of the pure Monarch decks, I'd be curious to see if they start siding this card specifically. Oh, that's another thing. Gladiator Beasts. I don't know where this deck sits in the metagame. I think it's kind of awkward because it's not great against heroes. It's really bad against the Hero Beat deck specifically. It's not great against fairies or dragons, and I guess it's alright against Vayu. Like, you probably have like a 50-50 matchup against Vayu, if I'm going to be honest. Your best draws probably beat them, but you get fucked hard by Royal Oppression, and just, like, Armed Wing is a pain to deal with. But you do have some tools in that matchup specifically. I don't know. I think that Gladiator Beast is in a tough spot. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of it. If we do, we might see some more innovative lists. I know users like Stealth have been doing some cool stuff with, like, Super Nimble Mega Hamster. Those are cool takes on the list. We could also see more of a Rock Stun type list. I know MMF has done some stuff with Koikimeru Guardian and multiple Hoplomas. I think this card is very underrated. Having, like, monster trap cards, basically, cards that double as trap cards, is very broken. I talked about this a little bit on a podcast with the boys, and yeah, when your monsters double as, like, threats plus Solemn Judgments, that's when they start to get crazy. I think Koikimeru Guardian is probably one of the best cards in the format that's not getting played at all right now, which is kind of weird. So maybe we'll see something with that. There's a lot of other evil hero, like, type OTK strategies, Evil Hero, Demise, there's a lot of stuff like that. We might see some more of that. I could see a deck like this making a deep run if decks are, like, super metagamed, but unfortunately, like, Dark Calling is going to catch a lot of the, like, flack that Miracle Fusion is also going to catch, and so Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer is actually pretty good against that too. Dueling Book's going to disconnect us here. The biggest thing that I'm expecting is I'm expecting a very aggressive metagame. If your deck is defensive, make sure you have the right answers to things. Make sure you're playing a really tight list. Of course, we're going to get DDoSed while trying to make a video. Wouldn't be a dueling book video without that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just really excited to see what people do. I'm excited to see what they bring. Maybe someone is going to exploit the fact that Royal Oppression isn't the best right now. Maybe someone's going to exploit the fact that Absolute Zero is the metagame. Maybe someone is going to exploit the fact that Vayu is the metagame in a way that maybe I'm not even thinking of. Maybe there's an Imperial Ironwall deck or something wacky like that that's just going to pop up and do some crazy stuff. I know the Frog combo deck plays Imperial Ironwall, and that's a fun little floodgate in the metagame for sure. Anyway, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Make sure and sign up. Make sure and be a part of the hype. The event will also be streamed here on this channel live Saturday and Sunday, and it will also be restreamed on Farfa's channel on Twitch, I believe. So definitely tune in wherever you want to. I appreciate all the love on all these videos and on the event. If you're entering the event, good luck. I wish you the best. Obviously, it's gonna be a tough event to top. There's gonna be probably a lot of players. You're looking at like a regional size event for sure. So good luck to all the participants, and just remember, we're all here to have fun. Really, I think that's my biggest thing, is just be respectful of the opponents, be respectful of the judges, be respectful of the people streaming, and just have a good time. It's a free event. Worst case scenario, you just lose a few hours out of your weekend. So hope things are going well for you guys. See you tomorrow in the stream. Peace out.